It says we're still going live, but if you are following me at Lurie Daniel Favors Show Media, I think is the account, Lurie Daniel Favors Media, you should be getting the notification that we are live right now. So as I announced at the beginning of the show, the Real Housewives of SCOTUS Insurrection are back. And for those of you who are hearing about this concept for the first time, welcome to the Lurie Daniel Favors Show here on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. And the Real Housewives of SCOTUS Insurrection is a concept I came up with last year, literally last year, maybe even 2023, because of the absolute hoish behavior of our Supreme Court justices. So for those of you who are new to this concept, I literally wrote a song about it. Like to hear it? Here it go. You ready? All right. Sam and Martha Alito, Clarence and Jenny, these are the leading hoes on the court. They're hoeing justice for dollars, trading democracies like ours. So Republicans keep power forevermore. Oh, Sammy and Martha, Clarence and Jenny, these are the biggest hoes on the court. Oh, but they are not alone. These mobsters worse than Al Capone. And Project 25 is the goal. Oh, yes, it is country because of Beyonce. Right, here we go. Second verse. They say Jenny helps insurrections and Martha flies flags of hate, showing their support for white supremacy. Their husbands hoe out justice, so it makes sense their wives do too, because they're living the phrase, who gon' check me, boo? Oh, Sammy and Martha, Clarence and Jenny, these are the biggest hoes on the court. Oh, but they are not alone. These mobsters is worse than Al Capone. And Project 25 is the goal. I missed that song. I missed the song so much. I did. Listen, y'all, thank you. Applause. Listen. All I'm going to say is hoes be hoeing. And this is not about sex workers, okay? It's a Friday, so we have a looser conversation on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show than we do Monday through Thursday. But this is not about sex workers, who I fully support the right for sex workers to exist. I support the right for sex workers to unionize, which they have actually started doing in Belgium, I think it is. I remember reading about that over the break. But so this is not about sex workers. This is, however, about the hoes of the court and how they hoe injustice. Now, here's the thing you got to be mindful of. We are all familiar with the concept of a sugar daddy, right? We all know sugar daddies, and a sugar daddy is someone who's got money, who wants a paramour, somebody whom they can ply with gifts, apartments, cars, luxury bags, and the like. And basically, in exchange for gifts, the person receiving the gifts will provide them with favors of the sexual variety. Now, a sugar daddy is a perfectly normal concept that we understand. It transcends cultures, it transcends nations and borders. But a sugar billy, now a sugar billy is a bit different. A lot of us are not familiar with the sugar billy. A sugar billy is a billionaire who functions as a sugar daddy. But because they are a billionaire, they have enough money to basically buy whole ass Supreme Court justices, which is exactly what has happened with our leading chief hoes of the court, Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas. Over the break, I could not believe it. This literally dropped, was it on the last week of the year? We got a report on the ethical crisis at the Supreme Court. And this was a report that basically culminated. It was a 20-month investigation where they essentially provided a whole bunch of new information about what was going on at the court. Now, what we already knew was that Clarence Thomas get flued out. So do Sammy Alito. Both of them get flued out. We learned that Jenny Thomas, who is the ebony and ivory to Clarence Thomas's, she's the ivory to his ebony. They basically, not only was he getting flued out, but she was like an active part of helping to foment the energy behind January the 6th, which we're going to be on the anniversary of come Monday. So she, sending text messages talking about stop the steal. Then we find out Sam Alito, also a hoe, also get flued out by the sugar billies like Harlan Crow and Leonard Leo and all these other people whose names we should not know. I should not know who your sugar billy is, but we do, because not only do the sugar billies flew these folks out, but they also then bring cases to the Supreme Court where the haughtiness of the court is able to preside over cases, even though the hoes on the court are being flued out by the people who are appearing in front of them. Literally the appearance of evil. Like my mom was, as a Christian, my daddy was a pastor. You were supposed to shun the very appearance of evil. Like that's the whole thing. Like judges are supposed to shun the very appearance of evil. And every other judge does, except the hoes on the Supreme Court. So what we find out over the break is not only did dumb things happen, and we already knew that Clarence Thomas had his mama's house bought and paid for by his sugar billy. You can do a lot as a sugar daddy, but you buy my mama's house, you might not have no questions for me for, you might own me for, you buy my mama's house and I'm already exposing that Clarence Thomas, would be willing to be a hoe. We know that Clarence Thomas also had children who were in his care, at least a child, a family member who was in his care, who basically had his education, private school education, to the tune of $6,000 a month, paid for by the sugar billy. So him and Sam Alito getting flued out, they go into places that their paltry salaries of less than, $250,000, far less than that, but their paltry salaries were not enough for them to live the life of luxury that they determined that they should live. And so we already knew a lot of this thanks to outlets like ProPublica, and who are doing amazing deep dives. And for those of you who are not familiar with ProPublica, they are my favorite white-owned media outlet when it comes to long-form journalism. They do a really good job, and they are white-owned. So, it's take it with the grain of whatever, but they do really, really good work. And so what we had known from them was that we already saw how this was going down. They had already, all the information I just shared with you, ProPublica was like, they did this, they did this, they did that, and the other thing. What we find out in this report, y'all, Jiminy Christmas on a cracker. Senator Dick Durbin and the Senate Judiciary Committee, which the Democrats were in charge of because of the way the numbers in the Senate work out. They put out this report, and Senator Dick Durbin was like, the highest court in the land can't have the lowest ethical standards. So long as Chief Justice Roberts and the Judicial Conference refuse to act, we must push for a legislative solution to this crisis to restore trust in the highest court. Good luck, Dick. Good freaking luck. Because here's what y'all found in the report. Y'all ready? Listen to this. Justice Scalia, and I swear, I should have been a Supreme Court justice. My mama said I should be a Supreme Court justice. I said I talk too much. I done said too many things on the record. Ain't no way they're gonna ever let me be a Supreme Court justice. But apparently, if I wanted to get rich, that's where I should have been going. Justice Scalia accepted lavish gifts from billionaires and others with business before the court for more than a decade. For more than a decade, in violation of federal laws, including 258 personal trips, dozens of which were never disclosed. Here's the thing. You know what's happened over the past decade? What are we? We're in 2025 now. But within, a decade or so before, we had a Voting Rights Act. People, remember that? The 1965 Voting Rights Act, which in 2013 was gutted by the Supreme Court. We used to have reproductive justice rights in this country. Remember that? When we used to have like the right to abortion everywhere, which was gutted by the Supreme Court. Curious, because my question becomes, which of the sugar billies bought the Voting Rights Act decision? Which of the sugar billies bought the reproductive justice decision? Because if you are for over a decade accepting gifts from billionaires and others, which to me includes corporations, who have business before the court. Bitch, what? Justice Thomas chose to ignore legal obligations to disclose lavish gifts after media scrutiny over his disclosures in violation of federal law. Who gon' check and boo? Justice Alito misused the personal hospitality exemption by not disclosing gifts of transportation and lodging that he received for a luxury fishing trip in Alaska. Justice Thomas failed to disclose gifts on 2 occasions that had never been known to the public until the committee's investigation. He went on a private jet trip to Saranac, New York, and in 2021, he went on a private jet and yacht trip that was sponsored by Harlan Crow, one of the biggest sugar billies out there. 2 well-established Stop the Steal symbols at 2 of the Alito's properties, because Sammy Alito ain't got one, he got 2 properties. I ain't mad at somebody having multiple properties, but I'm wondering, did a sugar billy buy your house the way they did Clarence Thomas's mama's house? Questions that should be answered. And they say that Sam Alito, basically these Stop the Steal symbols, which were the symbols that the MAGA movement, the insurrectionists were using when they attacked the White House, or not in the White House, the House when they attacked the space where governance happens. They were flying the flag, the stop the steal flag. And these were the same two pro-insurrection, pro-white supremacist flags that were flying at Sam Alito's properties, while Sam Alito was actively participating in cases that dealt with the 2020 presidential election and the January 6th insurrection, which essentially is not shunning the very appearance of evil. You saw the evil and you embraced it. You embraced it. We know that Justice Thomas got largesse. That's so cute. They call it largesse. Largesse from benefactors in amounts that, quote, have no comparison in modern American history. There's no comparison, which means Clarence Thomas is the biggest hoe of them all. I don't know if this is a source of pride. It's not a source of pride. This is a problem. Jenny Thomas's, quote, paid efforts involving the Stop the Steal movement and right-wing causes created a clear conflict of interest for her husband, Justice Thomas. Ebony and Ivory work together to undermine the country. I don't know. What the hell is this? Federal law prohibits justices from hearing cases where the interests of their spouses are involved. Here's the law. Here's the bright red line. And here's Justice Thomas and Alito and Scalia just running right over it. To date, the Judicial Conference of the United States has failed to adequately respond to the Supreme Court's ethical challenges. The Judicial Conference's September 24 revisions to gift disclosure requirements are oddly specific in expanding the personal hospitality exemption and seem more likely to absolve past misconduct and facilitate the acceptance of future largesse than to strengthen judicial ethics. Their hoes, their sugar billies are on record. And nobody in this Congress coming up is going to do anything about it because this Congress is in bed with the corporations that benefit from these activities. They're all hoeing. This is a problem. They are literally selling judicial decisions. And I wish that were an exaggeration, but when you have, according to the Senate Judiciary Committee's report, which was a 20-month investigation, when we know that you have for a decade been taking sugar billy gifts, getting flued out, getting blued out on whatever else is that y'all do on these private trips that nobody in my pay grade or lower or even higher can get access to. I mean, not higher to a certain point, yes, but are you serious? And we're not supposed to presume that the judicial decisions that have been promulgated from this court were not bought and paid for? Quite frankly, there is this concept in the law called a burden of proof, a shifting burden of proof. And what that means is if I'm accusing you of something, the responsibility is on me to prove that you did the thing I accuse you of. But then once I show to the court that you have done enough evidence to make it very likely that we're going to believe you did the thing, then the burden shifts to you. And you can rebut those presumptions. You can push back on the burdens that I established by saying, wait a minute, I know you said I did this, that, and the other thing, but here goes this evidence, that evidence, that evidence, and that, and this, and I did not do any of these things. And my evidence is better than yours. And so you established your burden, but then having heard your evidence, I responded and rebutted that establishment and put forward my own evidence that demonstrated that what you said had happened, hadn't happened. This is a shifting burden. So we have the presumption, we're supposed to have the presumption of innocence, right? We're supposed to be able to presume that the justices of the Supreme Court are doing what they are supposed to do. However, having seen the evidence, it is now clear to me we have to have a different presumption. I believe we must now presume that the Supreme Court, other than our beloved Ketanji Brown Jackson and Sonia Sotomayor and even Ilana Kagan, they're not in this group because notice they're not in this report. They're not in this report. It's only the Republican justices who are in this report. But it feels to me that so long as we have a 6-3 conservative majority, and we only have a 6-3 conservative majority because Donald Trump and the Republicans stole that seat from Merrick Garland, who was nominated by President Barack Obama. And quite frankly, Merrick Garland has been so terrible at his job as the head of DOJ that I don't even know. I don't have straight feelings about that anymore. I'm feeling a little differently than I did before. But they stole a justice seat. They stole a judicial seat. Neil Gorsuch, you ain't supposed to be in that seat. Amy Coney Barrett, your seat, you got an asterisk by your name forever because you only got that seat because they rammed it through right after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away. Y'all don't even belong in that space. And so now the presumption, I believe, for the American judiciary and those of us who work as officers of the law, our baseline understanding has had to shift, and it must be one that presumes the Supreme Court is compromised. Their decisions are compromised, which means the law that comes out of this court as it is currently constituted is compromised until they can establish that it's not. The same way that I believe that like police engage in policing racially until they can prove otherwise. It's a shifting burden, a shifting presumption. And now the ball's in their court. And so are the billionaires and the private jets and the yachts and the trips and the houses and the school tuition and the paintings and all the things are in their court because they're a court of hoes. It's a harem. It's a justice harem for the sugar billies. And we're just here. Proud to be whatever. We got 866-801-8255, 866-801-COURT. YouTube, 866-801-TALK is what I meant to say. YouTube, thank you for hanging out with us. I got to get back to the rest of the audience. We're going to turn this off now. Appreciate y'all. Make sure you hit the like button because apparently that's what's supposed to happen to make this all zhuzh and keep going. Appreciate y'all. Happy Friday. And for those of you who are also listening to Urban View, I'll see y'all there as we're going to continue that conversation. Y'all, we got to